Hello everybody, welcome back to the shop. Yet another winter indoor bench project. This here is an injection pump, diesel injection pump off of my Clark Model PC. This has been soaking for years in old diesel and old waste oil. I took a few components off, a few external components just to help the oil seep in there. There's a little plug here I took out, a little plug in the back, and there were a few things up here that I already took off, but it was just basically a big nut here, and I believe it was the delivery valve, so it was a ball and a spring, maybe a ball cage or ball carrier sort of thing. So really nothing too exciting that came out of there. So let's get this going. I'm going to start by, well, how am I going to start? And take this out right here. This is the main plunger that a push rod pushes, and there's a big snap ring in there, so I'm going to start by taking that out and pull this plunger out, and we'll see what's inside. Alright, so after getting this Jesus clip off, and let me tell you what, this is definitely a Jesus clip. This thing went flying. Right as I was thinking to myself, I should put glasses on. Kapow! This thing goes fucking rocketing across the shop. Then there's this plunger cap thing that luckily was fairly loose already. I just put needle nose in there, worked it back and forth, got it loose. And then behind this is the main plunger and a spring keeper, and then the spring below that. This plunger was stuck down, so I had to get a little creative. I made this little guy to hook in here, hook in the valve keeper. Then once again I used my indispensable vice grip slide hammer, and I was able to get it out. So let's see if I can, that's nice and loose now. So now I can get the keeper off, take the spring out. And then, let's see, there is this little T-head on here. I don't think that needs to be aligned to anything, so I'll slide that out. There you go. There's the main plunger. And you see here's the metering portion. This plunger looks very nice and clean, just a little bit of fine emery cloth and that'll clear up just right. Okay, so I did some tapping on the metering rack here, and now I got that moving. This thing here with the slots in it that the plunger goes in, that actually rotates, so I'll move the rack back and forth, and you can see it move that collar. So as the fuel rack goes back and forth, that rotates the plunger and also thus rotates that spill valve. And this got me to thinking, before I take this apart further, this has to be oriented and kind of oriented properly to the rack. Like, you don't want this in the minimum fuel position with the rack in the full fuel position, or vice versa. So there may be like a master keyway or something that I don't know about, but just to be on the safe side, I noticed that, now this isn't really perfect, but it's better than nothing, with the rack all the way to one extremity to the right as we're looking at it. This slot here in this collar lines up with a little viewing window on the housing. So that's better than nothing. I made a note of it, and it's also in this video. So let's keep going. Okay, the next step was a little bit of a head scratcher. I couldn't figure out how to get this rotating collar out, but I cleaned it out real well. That's a good trick, of course. Blew it out with air and everything. And this thing was, the snap ring, I guess you'd call it, was in the bore all the way down, retaining this. And it almost just looked like a machined feature or step in there. But of course I could see a gap of these two ends, and you just can't machine that sort of a feature way down in a hole like that with square corners. So I knew that this thing had to come out. So as you see, there's nothing to grab onto. I just kind of fucked around with it, and then I had this, you know, just a little hook tool that, you know, pulled it out, and then this came out quite easily. And there's the collar attaches to the pinion gear, and there's this I guess you'd call it a spring cup. This is the other end that the main spring goes into. And you'll notice that the gear has a notch and also a tooth that's notched. And if you were to look down in there, perhaps, yeah, you can see the rack has a dot on it. So I guess, you know, it's pretty obvious that there should be some sort of an alignment marking, but you know, it can never hurt to make notes like that when you're taking stuff apart, because maybe this thing was set at the factory with some special jig, and you know, there's no way to align it with a dot like that, so it can't hurt. Anyway, now I believe with all that out, this rack should be able to come out. Well, it's a little stuck, but I need to, there's some paint on the very end. I need to sand that paint off, and then that can come out. Also, you know, that screw was already taken out, that little set screw that rides in that groove to prevent over traveling. So of course you need to take that screw out. Alright, we got the last piece of the puzzle out, and that's this main plunger bore here. That was obviously in there, and I took a brass punch, punched it out that way, and out it came. There's part of the outlet, the delivery valve portion, and there's a copper sealing washer. There's the plunger bore. And then interestingly, well, it's kind of hard to do it with one hand, but I thought this was one piece and it was stuck. Well, it's not stuck anymore, but it's lapped, flat lapped, and it was stuck together, you know, like the way gauge blocks stick together. So that's a precision surface there. I really don't know why they did that. I mean, you know, it's for sealing, of course, but I don't know why they didn't just you know, make this one piece, or put a copper gasket in there. But anyway, that's a very critical surface, so I'm not going to touch that with emery cloth or anything, just clean it up. Luckily it's still clean. And then lastly, see that little hole there? I think, see, I'm feeling, there's another one here. Well, I should figure that out. I believe it's this hole aligned with this. Again, a little screw went in there, and that aligned it so it's not rotated one way or the other, because again, there's that spill valve in there, and we want to make sure that's aligned properly. So the next thing to do with all this is just clean it all up and really just put it back together. There's nothing damaged. There's really nothing, even though it was stuck, there's really nothing in bad shape whatsoever. The spring looks okay, it doesn't look dead, doesn't feel dead. So, you know, the gear teeth are nice. This really looks like a nice pump. Alright, so one of the last things I'm going to do before I put this together is this is the part that was on top of the main plunger. Had the flat lapped surface on it. And up top here, you'll see when I put this back together, but this is where the delivery valve seats. And here is the delivery valve. You can see it has these fins that go in there as a guide, and there's your chamfered valve seat. And the seat looks pretty decent, but I just wanted to make sure that it was as good as it could be. And I'm going to lap it. But the lapping, at least the lapping compound I have, like the typical valve, engine valve lapping compound, is way too coarse. So I happen to have some of this time saver. This is the coarse lapping compound. I use this for lapping in Babbitt bearings. And what's nice about it is that firstly, this is, even though this is labeled as coarse, this is a lot finer than coarse valve compound. And this, it breaks down. It doesn't stay its same grit, which is why it's used for Babbitt, because it'll break down and eventually just turn smooth and soft and get flushed out of the bearing, so it won't continue to grind away at that Babbitt. But anyway, I'm going to use just a little bit of this. It comes as a powder, as you can see, and then you mix it with some oil. I'm going to use some of this to lap the seat. It just, you know, it looks you know, it's not bad, but it's definitely not like clean, shiny metal. So I'll just go at it like that. Lift it up every few turns to bring that grit back in. Here's the result. The poppet came out very nice. I'm actually a little concerned about the other seat. You can see it actually has some pitting on it. And there's one pit that kind of goes all the way across the valve face. So, I don't know, what can you do? This is about as good as it's going to get without recutting the seat. I'm just going to try it as it is. It's going to be a while before I even run this engine. Alright, so everything is cleaned, everything is lapped as best as it can be. So, time for it to go back together. So the first thing is going to be this main plunger, or this main plunger bore, cylinder, I guess you'd call it. I'm going to give it one last wipe down. I'll give everything a coat of oil. Now this gets aligned by that little screw that goes in there. Goes in this hole right here. So I should just be able to drop this in. Make sure it's more or less aligned. Oh, it just slid right in, beautiful. And there actually is that little divot right there, if you can see that. In that little divot, there is I don't know, lead or Babbitt or something that acts as a, you know, a lock. I'm going to tighten that down a little bit more later with a better screwdriver, but that's that, and I'll just give that a little punch with a punch, and it'll mush that soft material out and lock that screw. Now here's the second piece, again with the flat lap here. That's going to mate with the pressure plunger bore cylinder thing. Now this had a copper washer on it. Well, this is more than a washer. I don't know what you call this, but it has a chamfer on either side. So I'll put that back on there. And this doesn't get oriented any which way, so I'll just drop that in there. And then what goes in there next is what you didn't see me take apart. It's the delivery valve. So that slides right in there. I'm going to get some oil on these threads. And then this is another part that I had already taken off. This is just the outlet fitting. That's where your injection line would attach. And here's the spring. There's a bore in there for the spring, and that spring pushes on the delivery valve top of the poppet. There we go, that's about as tight as I can get it by hand. I'm going to put it in the vise later. Now we'll slide the fuel rack in there. Now I'm going to align this so that little dot, see the dot is front and center right now, so the dot on the rack is in the middle. Anyway, slather this up with oil. Now I can't really do the have you see what I'm doing on the camera at the moment, I don't think. I'm just going to have to, well, I already showed you before. And there you have it. See, all the timing or alignment dots are aligned. Now it's time to put our main plunger in. I did notice when I was cleaning this up that there is a mark on here and not on the other side, so I didn't notice that coming apart, but you know, it does make sense that there is a mark, and I'm going to assume that this mark is supposed to line up with all the other marks. Now this oil might be a little bit thick. You know, I probably should put diesel on this because the clearances are so tight. The oil, you know, the film thickness of the oil is such that it'll actually kind of bind up this plunger. But I think it'll be okay. It'll just be a little tight. Well, again, there's a shot inside. We got the plunger in there now. Here's the bottom spring cup. That just gets dropped down in there. And now we have this spring clip. Got enough oil on my hands here. And this spring clip, it doesn't go into a groove. I know you can't really see anything right now, but there we go. This doesn't go into a groove or anything. It's just a friction fit at the bottom of the hole. And there we are with the bottom spring cup and the retainer in. On the bottom of the screen, bottom of the hole, you can see the gap of the spring clip retainer. Now I'm going to, since this doesn't go in a groove or anything, and I'm glad it doesn't go in a groove because I don't know how I would have gotten it out, I'm just going to put my screwdriver against it and give it a couple taps all the way around to make sure it's all the way down. Now the spring, this big ass spring can go in. Put some oil on that. The oil in this case for the spring, this is just rust prevention. This isn't obviously for fitment of any sort. Got to put this spring retainer on, so I've got to pull the plunger out. Probably pull it out most of the way. Now with the plunger out, I can double verify that there's the notch here on the plunger and the notch below it on the plunger. So just going to make sure not to rotate that. Drop the spring in there. Now I'll put this retainer on. Then that goes on. Then I gotta figure out how to put this thing in without killing myself. Bam! Got it. Seems like it works. I can hear a little air pumping through it. You got to make sure once you've put this little cover on, this little cap, that you don't push the fuel rack, because that'll misalign everything. But this seems to be working. So there you have it, everybody. That's how you do it. That's how you rebuild one of these Bosch pumps. APF1C. That's what this one is. The APF is the main family of pumps, as I understand it. So that's it, everybody. Man, I really look forward to actually trying this thing. But it's going to be quite some time before the Clark diesel is running. The piston is stuck in the cylinder, and it just needs a lot. It needs to definitely be gone through. But this is one less thing that I need to do, one less thing soaking in my oil bucket. I hope you enjoyed this, hope you learned something. It was pretty basic inside. I mean, that's all these injection pumps are. It's just a plunger that makes pressure and then some sort of spill valve or a metering valve of some sort to bleed off the excess unneeded fuel, depending on the amount of load that the engine's running at. So there you have it, everybody. Thanks for watching. Make sure to hit the subscribe button and like button and keep yourself up to date with all the projects that I've been working on. And as always, thanks for watching, and as always, come on back for more.